Hello everyone, this is Dr. Patrick Azanza, your HR coach. Today, we have a very important topic. I will share with you my top 10 HR tips as we transition to GCQ. You know, it is not because that ECQ has been lifted that people should be enjoying going out and forgetting about the importance of observing social distancing. The number one rule under GCQ is still very much the same. Stay at home. So, all things that we can do at home, we must do at home. And as we transition to the new normal, to the new work rules after the ECQ has been lifted, we must remember this, that still, as much as possible, people have to stay at home. Under GCQ, the fight against COVID is very much on. And it is under GCQ that we even have to be very strict, that we even have to make sure that our workers are safe because now they are exposed. Unlike at the time that they are working from home, this time, as they slowly go back to the workplace, not all of them, but some selected employees will start going back to work. And as they commute, as they go back to our workplaces, then they are very much at the risk. Health is still our number one concern. So government has allowed us to work back, but under very strict rules. And as HR leaders, as HR professionals, we are at the forefront of this. We should be the one making sure that things happen in accordance with how government and our health agency would like us to do in our workplaces. So, without much ado, here are my top 10 HR tips. Tip number 1 is about communication. Under this time of the pandemic, communication is very important, and HR has to ensure that everything is properly communicated to the employees. We have to tell them that we are not going back to the same situation that we left off prior to this COVID pandemic. Things have changed, and the rules in the workplace have changed. They will have to embrace the new normal. And HR has to properly plan this. As we have onboarding rules, we should also have or implement reboarding rules. And what would be included in the reboarding rules? These are guidelines which mainly focus on the safety and the health monitoring of our employees. So how do HR people go about this? First, we must be able to identify the employees who are allowed to go back to work. And as they go back to the workplace, we should communicate with them and tell them clearly the reboarding guidelines. Do not forget to remind them to bring their IDs and their certificate of employment. There will be checkpoints, and there will be, at some point, moments where they could be flagged down, they could be asked by the police to present some identification and quarantine pass or reasons why they are outside. They must be very clear that they are going back to work, that they are allowed to go back to work, and they should be able to present proper documentation. Remind the employees that as much as possible, their itinerary for the day should be home, workplace, and back to home. And that there might be some curfews that have to be observed. Of course, if they are working in a BPO, then there are some exemptions that are allowed. But as much as possible, they should observe the allowed working hours. And if there is anything that they need to buy, for example, if they need to do some groceries, make sure that you remind them to do that within the area or within the workplace or near their homes so that they will not have problems. They should not cross borders or go to another city just to do their groceries. That's a big no-no. As much as possible, it should be done within the vicinities of their workplace or their homes. Very important. Remind them to wear face masks. That is part of the new normal. As they go out of their homes, they should wear face masks. And because sometimes the weather is not something to be trusted, they must bring something to cover their heads or to warm their bodies just in case there's a rain, or if it's too hot, then they should have something to cover their heads like umbrellas or hats. As much as possible, encourage your employees to bring their own food for lunch, or if they are in the night shift, then dinner and snacks. It's always safe to eat food that you yourselves prepared. Convince your management to provide coffee, water dispenser, hot and cold water in the pantry is something that will really be a big help to your employees as they work back in your office sites. I understand that in some companies, especially the BPOs, they even provide noodles, and the hot water would be able to allow the employees to prepare the food. Candies, perhaps, would also be a big help, just in case they would need some sweets in case they run out of sugar. So what's the tip number 2? My HR tip number 2 is for HR people to make sure that the workplace is ready. Make sure that it is properly disinfected. So coordinate with your admin support staff. Make sure that the guards are ready and that the guards are properly oriented what to do as employees come back to work. And if there are guests, there should be the guest screening protocols. Guests will have to fill up the forms and declare their previous contacts or whereabouts and whatever the company would require from guests. For supply deliveries, make sure that the guards are instructed how to go about it so that as much as possible, the ones delivering the supplies will not have that much contact with all the other employees. Bottom line, we should be able to make sure that the physical contact is limited or avoided in the workplace. Social distancing in the workplace is a must. Part of the social distancing rules is that HR should be able to coordinate with the admin support to make sure that the workstations are properly distanced from one another. The Department of Labor and the PESA have issued guidelines on this, and the workstations should be at least 1 meter separated from one another, and it should have 1 meter not just from the side but from all sides apart from the next workstation. HR tip number 3 is to ensure that there are proper safety and security rules imposed. Part of the new normal is making sure that everyone going into the workplace is properly screened. As employees go back to the workplace, right at the very entrance, the guards must be able to properly screen the employees. There has to be thermal scanners. Temperatures should be properly taken so that those who are beyond the allowable temperature should not be allowed entry and should be advised to go back home or see a doctor or coordinate with a company nurse. The same should be done to company guests. There should be proper screening of anyone going inside the company workplace. Even those delivering mails or supplies, they have to be properly screened. Part of the new normal is making sure that no one gets into the workplace that can compromise the health of our employees. One area of concern for HR is for those companies using biometrics to capture attendance. You must be able to shift to a safer mode of capturing attendance of employees working in the offices. Perhaps you can do this by using their logins to their computers as the basis for attendance monitoring. In the pantry and even in the toilets, they should be told to observe proper social distancing rules. And the washing of hands is very important. They have to be provided with alcohol, with soap, sufficient supplies so that they are able to observe this at a regular time. A regular washing of hands is really very important. Especially in the workplace, we must be able to impose this as part of the new norm. It will save a lot of lives. Regular cleaning of the workstations, and especially the computers, the keyboards, is very important. There has to be a continued, regular disinfection of the workplace. We must also make sure that our cleaners and porters have the proper personal protective equipment. We have to make sure that they are provided by the admin support staff with these proper protective suits. Otherwise, when they are contaminated, everyone in the company will also be exposed. HR must properly and strictly enforce these safety rules. HR tip number 4, regularly monitor the health status of your employees, whether they are working from home or they are part of the ones who were allowed back to work. Your health and wellness staff, your nurses, should be able to monitor their health. And not only that, as HR, we should be concerned about their mental condition, and we must provide as much as possible, a 24/7 HR support so that whatever they feel, whenever they have conditions like depression or they feel anything that they need someone to talk to, HR has to be there. If the company has budget, free vitamins or fruits will help a lot in making sure that the employees are healthy. Now take note that under GCQ, skeleton force of employees, and in terms of the PESA guidelines, at least 10% of the workers are allowed to go back to the workplace. As HR people, we should make sure that we have an inventory, proper inventory of our workforce, and we know their specific details such as age, because 21 and below and 60 years old and above are critical age factors. And also, HR, in coordination with the health and wellness staff, should be able to make sure that any preconditions, any health conditions that our employees may have, diabetes, cancer, heart problems, lung or respiratory problems, kidney problems, or any other conditions, health conditions that might compromise them to the COVID-19, are important considerations as HR or management identify the people who will be prioritized to go back to work. Very important, of course, is pregnancy conditions. HR must make sure that women employees are not exposed or compromised in these kinds of situations. HR tip number 5 is about work schedule. HR must plan in coordination with top management and with the managers and supervisors the work schedule of those who are going back to work. As much as possible, the work schedule should distribute the employees so that physical contact can be avoided even as they work within the workplace or on-site. HR tip number 6 is anticipate transportation or commute issues. Under the GCQ, the public transport is not yet fully operational. Most of the employees who will be allowed to go back to work will really rely on their own vehicles. Maybe HR can arrange a carpool, and also a van can be provided by the company if it is part of the budget. And if in BPOs, if hotels nearby the BPOs are available, then some arrangements with the nearby hotels can be made. But for those who will be doing commutes, I understand some workers will even be using their bicycles. Then these things have to be anticipated by the HR. The availability of transportation should be taken into consideration as the HR plans the work schedule with the management. Shuttles with specific pickup points can, for example, be provided. But then again, as a reminder, hotels being provided to employees, especially in the BPOs, as well as transport support like shuttles or vans, will really depend heavily on the availability of budgets on the part of the company. HR tip number 7 is make sure that you properly monitor the attendance and the outputs of the people who are working for the company, whether under ECQ, GCQ, post-GCQ. Part of the new normal will be still the monitoring of the attendance and outputs of employees. And the HR should make sure that because of the changes in the work situation, the employees still are properly informed as to how they can report their attendance, how they can file their leaves, whether online or personal. If they are working at home, then they should know the rules, and if they are back in the workplace, then they should know the proper procedures, the contact person, so that there will be no confusion. Also, HR must not forget to do its part in terms of making its regular HR reports. Report to top management, report to or feedback to the middle management, as well as the mandatory reports that have to be submitted to government agencies. Like if you are in the BPO sector, there are reports that have to be regularly submitted to PESA, and also reports that have to be submitted to the Department of Labor. These are very important. And from time to time, there are surveys that are being conducted by the government. HR should make sure that they participate in this, because this will help a lot in our being able to flatten the curve or address this COVID pandemic. HR tip number 8. Do not forget our very important role in terms of providing HR support to ensure that the attendance and payroll processes are made on time. And as we know, this is very important to employees. If there are attendance concerns that have to be addressed, then make sure that you properly support, inform, do the extra mile. Inform employees if there are some deductions going to be made, if there are certain concerns that they failed to file their leaves or attendance, everything. Make sure that you do your part on this aspect, because this will really help a lot in terms of our employees being able to adjust and to adapt to this situation. And also, please do not forget your role in processing other HR concerns of employees. If they have SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig concerns, make sure that all these are still properly addressed and processed by the HR. HR tip number 9. Don't forget your role in terms of employee engagement. Make sure that in this time of the pandemic, you cheer up the employees. Provide them very vital support in terms of team building, whether it's online team building activities or team building that will observe social or physical distancing if you're doing it in the workplace. Part of our work as HR managers or HR professionals is not just to assure our workers as they go back to the workplace that they are safe and secured in the area. We also have to make sure that they have this sense of job security. A lot of things are going on in the minds of employees. They might be thinking if they will still have work, how long will the company be able to sustain this? Now, part of our work is to assure them about job security and to assure employees that their work is safe and that the company is doing everything to make sure that the business is afloat. And my final tip, HR tip number 10, is be alert. Plan for emergencies. Just make sure that you are prepared for any eventuality. Times are not as they are, and anything could happen. There might be some need to go back to ECQ or whatever government may decide. You must be alert. You must be prepared. And one way of doing that is to make sure that you're always updated. You keep yourself abreast with what's happening around you, with what's happening in the business community, in the government. And so you would be updated as to the guidelines issued by the government. Part of being prepared is getting the emergency contact numbers of your employees so that for anything that would happen as they are in the workplace, you would know whom to contact, and at least you will have their emergency phone numbers. Another one is HR should have an emergency hotline in the workplace, and this should be known to all employees whether they are working from home or whether they are back in the workplace. You should have an HR hotline. And if there are available free apps to monitor the health conditions of your employees. For example, in the Philippines, there is Curve, a free app that allows health monitoring of the employees and the citizens. Then avail of this so that at least you are able to track the conditions of your employees, and at any instant you will have a dashboard that gives you a summary of reports and the health conditions that you may require or management may require you to submit. Now, in this time of the pandemic or under this new normal, HR has to serve as the heart and soul of the company. Employees have to feel that HR is there first, that HR cares for them. And with this, you can be able to assure them that somehow, even if things have changed, and somehow, even if things have transitioned to the new normal, HR is there as a constant, as a support to their needs as they face the challenges of this pandemic. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my top 10 most important tips on HR as we transition to GCQ. I hope that you have learned something new again today. And if you want to continue to receive copies of my videos and my presentation, please do not forget to follow my FB page or subscribe to my YouTube channel and click down below. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.